Stress versus anxiety.
Well, anxiety is like I said, a part of our nervous system.
Yes.
You know, it's that vigilance that makes us survive.
Mm-hmm.
But anxiety is something that's supposed to work as an alarm mechanism
Mm-hmm.
for ourselves, and it's not supposed to be something that remains on all the time. So when people are a little bit anxious, let's get an example, for example, of anxiety, which is common, like public speaking.
Yes.
Most people are afraid of public speaking.
Yes.
Or speaking in front of a camera.
I was just about to say, giving a big presentation at work, that kind of, it's not even not even a stage, but even in a meeting room at work.
Exactly. And or it could be going on stage. Famous actors say that they still have anxiety before they perform.
Mm-hmm.
Famous talk show hosts say that they have anxiety before they start performing. And so that's a normal state. It just keeps the blood running and gives you that edge in your performance. And that's healthy. But then you're supposed to calm down. Your nervous system is supposed to calm down. And in the case of anxiety, it doesn't.
Okay.
Anxiety, when it is actually preventing you from living a full life. When it's intervening with your day-to-day life, with your work, with your relations. For example, you're constantly projecting into future what can go wrong.
Okay. That leads to hypervigilance, and that leads to you just living in your head, kind of imagining the worst for everything and anything.
It's one of the things that anxiety can do. Then you can be obsessively compulsive. There are many sub categories under the anxiety disorder itself, or anxiety disorders. Okay. However, it's something where you cannot. Well, let's say take another workplace example. Actually, what's interesting, if you look at different types of professions, I looked at some interesting statistics about which professions are the most anxious.
Anxious. Mm-hmm.
And performing arts.
Wow. And these are the ones that actually make a living out of being on
stages. Make a living out of it. So it's roughly 44% of those people have anxiety disorder.
Wow.
The next one was finance industry.
Not surprising then.
38. Doesn't surprise me either. It's especially if you're a trader.
Yes.
And you're in that kind of really high speed, volatile, ding, 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 ding. So you have to be constantly on top of things, but we cannot do that 24/7. We were not built that way. Mm-hmm. And then the next one, which I think is really interesting, is government workers.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You would think that
public sector workers.
The bureaucracy, we always think bureaucracy and we always think it's the slow paced job, but in essence, they also I don't know, would it be applicable that the anxiety could be because they feel the responsibility that millions of people are depending on their work?
I don't know. I was intrigued. I found those statistics very recently. I'm digging into that because I find that really, really intriguing.
Wow.
The other one, if we look at depression, for example, then the most depressed group of all professions are lawyers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it possible because they see the worst in people?
Could be.
Wow. I mean, usually lawyers are not involved in happy cases. They're involved with people going against each other in sometimes the worst of manners.
Yes, and you have to anticipate the worst. Yeah. You always look at risks. You always look at what can go wrong.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. I would like to see, how that compares with people who are in the military or people who are also, first
responders. First line
health workers. Also would be interesting to see how therapists are doing at the moment, because there's a lot of therapist burnout at the moment.
Of course.
But again, going back to these government workers, the second group with highest depression are governments and public sector employees. That I can understand a little bit easier than the anxiety piece.
That's true. But even when the anxiety, going back to the top rating category in anxiety and them being the within the performing arts, there's also now, and I believe this could be also something that has been progressing. It's the ratings, the box office, the charts, the social media following and liking and stuff. And this is also a state that they always have to be alert to, and that causes anxiety. It's like, will this be a hit? Will this win? Will this get me the platinum? Is it platinum record or something? And it's totally relatable, but.
Yeah, I think Ananda, I think that there's an interesting thing here, which is really, really important when it comes to our nervous system. And again, I really talk about nervous system because that's the foundation for everything. It's
That's
not
true.
in our really, it's not in our heads. We are not able these days to let go, to have those peaks of anxiety. The anxiety is ongoing also at work. Work pressures, we talked about that in one of the episodes. Work pressures have increased tremendously during the past 30 years. People used to be okay at work. Workplace was kind of like a community.
Yes.
You shared things. You didn't like some people, you liked some people, but it was a community that you shared certain things in common. Nowadays, you have to watch your back. You might lose your job.
Yeah.
There might be a lawsuit against something that you said, did, or depending on where you live.
Yes.
There are all these pressures, and that puts us in a state of constant alert. So what you were saying about social media and being observed all the time, for example, at work, your work performance is being monitored all the time. KPIs are good. Key performance indicators are good. I'm all for numbers. But the way we are doing it now is like you have to deliver all the time. And that does make us anxious.
And
our nervous system never slow down.
Because even nowadays, delivering is not enough. If you're not over delivering, you're not performing. Mm-hmm. And that in itself, because I spoke to a lot of people when the lockdown happens and everyone is like, okay, so I'm not going to spend like 2 to 3 hours in traffic going to work and coming back from work. But the thing shifted where they're expected to be on call, online, 10, 12 hours a day. And that made them more anxious because now they're in their home environment and they can't even, kind of spend time with their own family, or they can't switch off because now you're home. What's your excuse? We're all home. Now you have to take my call at 1 a.m. and kind of attend to whatever we're talking about.
Yeah.
And these are things that we did not. Well, when I first started working, my first job was in TV production, live TV production. And it was so much fun. I mean, there was a lot of anxiety to it because it's live. Whatever you do goes on air right away.
That's an anxiety-driven job.
Yes, we're in the control room and everything's like, and once you miss, someone was calling and you started swearing at the presenter, like, oh my God, then you have to switch it off and stuff. But once we were done, we were done. We had fun. It was a community. We, lingered around even together and spent more time than the 12 hours we were already together, but it was part of the environment. Now I can imagine with everything I'm seeing and how things are, and now you're talking, it's a whole new level of anxiety, and it's a whole new level of what are you presenting, and the content is all about, you have, how are you differentiating yourself? There's this constant need to overperform and over deliver, and this would definitely be triggering a lot of mental health issues. It's no longer just about balance and wellness and stuff. No, other level. No.
And anxiety feeds itself. So then there are all these thoughts and mindset that comes in. Yes. The cognitive distortions of how we think and how we see the world, and we see that through a filter. True. And then when you really get to that state where you have an anxiety disorder, when it's interfering with your life, it's a terrible thing to have because it's ongoing rumination, ongoing, something is going to happen. And in the worst case, there are people who cannot step out of their home because they're afraid of what might happen.
Yes.
And being around anxious people actually feeds anxiety. It's very contagious.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
Yeah. So you need to, the best thing you can do for yourself is to take a step back and learn ways to calm yourself down, your nervous system down, whether it's reading, yoga, anything goes.
Whatever
Anything
works for
goes.
you.
Whatever
A
works for you.
bath,
Yeah.
aromatherapy. I always have my candles and stuff, but my essential oils work. At least in the morning, I like to start my day with them.
Yeah.
Kind of, they give me the.
Yeah.
But
I love good stand-up comedy. These days I'm really,
exactly that, because again, what you're trying to do, what are the opposite hormones that your body would like opposite to cortisol and adrenaline, the endorphins, what are the opposite hormones that you're triggering to also get you into a state of calm?
Are you asking me?
Yes, please.
I wouldn't be able to answer that one.
Okay.
Off the bat, right, like this, I would have to think about that.
Okay. But in essence, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to deregulate our body from the stress hormones to happy hormones.
Yes, exactly. And I honestly, the whole dopamine business, and what's really good for you, knowledge is not important.
No.
It's what makes you feel good.
Yes, that's true.
Piece of chocolate, stand-up comedy, something else, as long as it's healthy for you, as long as it's not going to be counterproductive to your nervous system and to your mental health.
And I think that's the point, as long as you're not abusing it, which leads us to substance abuse.
Right.
Which is, in essence, it's doing a lot of something that makes you feel good.
Yes.
But then it gets out of control. So substance abuse, let's tackle that one.
Substance abuse is the big winner in the workplace issues.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's, depression, anxiety, and substance abuse are the three major issues at work.
Okay.
And substance abuse really has always existed, alcohol being the number one drug of choice around the world. A lot of people don't get help. It's just that, glass of wine after work, or half a bottle of wine, or bottle of wine after work, or whatever drink. But it actually has been getting worse since the pandemic started.
Okay.
So people are medicating themselves. They're medicating their anxiety, their boredom, their depression with substance abuse. And the terrible thing about substance abuse is that it makes things worse. It may feel like it helps at the beginning, but it actually, in the long run, makes it worse. And I'm not saying that you cannot have a drink, or you cannot, have some other substances wherever they are legal. But having that as a crutch in the long run, it will actually be very counterproductive for you. Because it's like taking a pill. It's masking the actual issue.
And that also relates to other elements such as weed, marijuana, but then there's further hardcore stuff like cocaine and heroin and stuff. These, excuse me, these are all substances that are used to mask the pain.
Yeah. And they are highly addictive, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very. So once your brain gets into that loop, it can be hard to step away. And of course, like, again, you know me, I'm all about spectrums.
Yes.
But again, there is a spectrum, of course. Having a glass of wine occasionally is not substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not addiction. But the more you do that, and the longer you use substances or certain substance, the more likely you will go towards a real addiction. And addiction means that you cannot not be without it.
Yeah. It's developing that habit that you just, in your mind, you can't function without it being there.
Yeah. Many people think that they can, this the famous, like, I can stop anytime.
Yeah.
And this is not to preach, because I don't think that preaching, in particular with substance abuse, is not going to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to stop drinking or smoking marijuana or something because you tell them to. There's always some underlying cause for that.
Okay.
And again, going back to this, if you can get help, if you can get therapy, that would be beneficial, because you don't do these things just out of the blue. Almost every addict has good reasons for being an addict.
There are root causes that need to be addressed and healed through.
If any of the listeners are interested in this, Dr. Gabo Mate has really good stuff around addiction and mental health. So I highly recommend any of his materials. There's lots online, and he has written several books.
Dr. Mate, yes.
Yeah.
Last but not least, depression.
Depression, yes. The number one cause of workplace disability in the world.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's big. You're saying
that's
disability
big
now.
That's big, yeah. And all of these mental health issues at the moment are the biggest ailment in the world at the moment. So that's huge. But depression, yes, is the biggest cause of disability around the world. Depression, as I mentioned earlier, we all feel sad at times. And depression is being used, again, very loosely. Oh, I feel depressed. Oh, I'm depressed about the day. It's so gray, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe not in where you are based, because you don't really have gray days, but
very rare. But yes, so when we have them, they're depressing.
Yes. They do have impact on your mood.
Yes.
So you may feel a little bit, sad or slow, blue, but that's not depression. Depression is a condition that is really debilitating you, and it ranges again from mild to severe. And when you are in severe depression, it's hard for you to function.
That's when you're just not getting out of bed. You just can't function. You can't do anything.
Exactly.
You can't bring yourself to do anything, and you can't help it too. So
no, you can't help it.
Depression is not optional. It's not a choice.
It's not optional. Yeah. And this is something that people often say, oh, just get on with it, or you put it behind you, or what's the problem? Or then people, but I mean, well-meaning people often, they come up with good ideas like, oh, you should eat healthier and exercise more and do some mindfulness exercises. When you are in that deep space in clinical depression, that's the last thing you're able to do. That's the last thing in your mind. You're lucky if you get out of bed and you get some food in your stomach. My friend Bill Burnett, who's an expert in mental health at work, he's a mental health advocate in the US, has an organization called Stay Awesome.
Nice.
It's and he's advocating for positive approach to mental health. A positive approach to depression, and a kind of like a fun approach. So he's written a lot of comedy around that, and he has a really funny TED talk about the topic. Yeah, so I really highly recommend that if anybody's interested. But again, like Bill was saying, that this is something that you cannot control. In one of his talks, it's like it's not an option. It's not that you choose. I'm going to choose to feel better, because you cannot. You're in a state where you cannot. Depression has. There are many, many good resources for depression, also for anxiety, also for substance abuse. If you happen to live in a country where the government doesn't provide these services, or some NGOs or associations, then there are a few countries that really have excellent resources on the subject. Australia being one of them. There are tons of very good resources. You just Google them. There's, for example, an organization called Beyond the Blue. There's also, Lifeline. I mean, there are
online services.
Online resources for people to educate themselves about mental health, about anxiety, depression, substance abuse, any of these topics that we've talked of. So, and Canada is another one. So Australia and Canada have really, really good resources in English.
Now, depression, we're bringing it to the workplace, or we're bringing it within the context of the workplace. What could be some, as we said with other examples, what could be some of the things that could trigger depression in the workplace? Like when we know, but we're talking about anxiety and stress and stuff, it's the high performing, keep doing it,
Right, right,
that
yeah.
kind of thing. With depression, would it be kind of the not being able to please your boss, or not getting KPIs? We spoke about KPIs as in key performance indicators, not getting the ratings that you thought you deserved. Could these be triggers to get you into a depressive mode, and then beyond that, kind of the compounding effect leads you to clinical depression?
I think that for when it comes to depression at work, it's not triggered by one single thing.
Yes.
Depression is often linked to hopelessness.
Okay.
You don't see options, you don't have hope.
Okay.
It's that gloominess maybe that has an impact on people. Let's go back into these lawyers and government workers that we talked of. If you are in a job where you see no future, or you see a lot of bad stuff happening,
yeah,
could also be people who are working in the police force,
where there's an
doctors.
element of loss of faith in something you strongly believe in.
Loss of faith of something, or hopelessness. Hopeless. You no longer have faith in humanity, for example. You are bored, and then your work doesn't provide you a meaning. I think it's also this whole, it's linked to meaning.
Yes.
But again, depression can be triggered for so many reasons. There can be transgenerational reasons. It can also be a medical thing, for example. So I cannot say that there's one thing or few things at work that will trigger depression. You already have a predisposition.
And that is my question, actually. Do any of the ailments we spoke of now, stress, burnout, anxiety, depression, are any of them associated with genetic predisposition?
I mean, I do believe strongly that there's a connection between the two.
Okay.
And now there's more and more research about that. Transgenerational transmission. There's a lot of research on children of who have gone, like war or real trauma, and how there's certain coding in there, in almost like a cellular level code. Not almost, there's a cellular level coding of trauma and also some of these things that we've discussed. And again, it's pretty clear for therapists that anxiety runs in families. If you had a very anxious mother, you are more likely to have that anxiety yourself.
Yes.
Or if there was a lot of depression in the family, that often is passed on as well. Part of it probably is genetic, and part of it is just what we see around us.
Environment and nurture and everything else.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't think this is why it's so fascinating, because you don't really know where things come from.
Yeah.
But I also think that we don't necessarily need to know what's the exact source of them. The important piece is to heal them.
Okay. Well, I think we've covered a lot today. I love that. I'm sure they're going to come up, the topics and the issues will come up in future episodes. But for now, these are the most common. Yes, these are the most common of mental health issues, manifestations, ailments within the workplace. And thank you, Susanna, for this. I loved it.
Thanks, Hannah.
And I know we could talk about this for another few hours. So we'll sum it up now, and we'll address it in future episodes. Thank you for being with us. We are putting in our best efforts to demystify mental wellness within the workplace, and join us on our next episode. Bye for now.